In this video, I'm going to talk about safety in the labs as well as safety at home. We're going to look at two series of symbols that will help us. The first one is called WHMIS, which is the Workplace Hazardous Material Information System. And the second one, let's see if I can find it, it's called the Household Hazardous Product Symbols. And here are the products here. So let's see what we're going to learn today. So let's see if I can enlarge this a little bit. Perfect. So here, this information is from a website called Canadian Centre for Occupational Health and Safety. Keep in mind that when we do labs or when we go to work, we often work with different chemicals that could be harmful for us. The whole idea here is that if we are being safe because we know about the products, then we can go home, take care of our lives, and then be able to do more science the day after. So let's see what this whole idea of WHMIS is working with. This is a new legislation from 2015 with new symbols, and WHMIS works with three main aspects. The first one is that all aspects of chemicals in the workplace need to be labeled. So in a moment, we're going to talk about the different labels. They have specific symbols that will help us visually identify different chemicals and what we can do to make sure that we stay safe. The second part is what we call the safety data sheets. Each of these products that we use in the lab or in the workspace will have a safety data sheet to give us information for how to handle those chemicals. And the third part of the WHMIS program is what we call education and training. It's important to have symbols and having all the documents to make sure we stay safe. However, if there's no training, no education, they become useless. And that's one of the reasons we have this video today. Let me show you one of my favorite posters about WHMIS. It's this one right here. It's in blue. I love it. Let's see if I can put it this way. Perfect. So for the WHMIS program, so here are the 5 letters. I'd like to remind you, it's the Workplace Hazardous Materials Information System. So here there are symbols to help us quickly to identify products that we are dealing with at the workplace. These will be used, some of these are used in the lab, in high school, or in the workplace. Keep in mind that not all of the products or all of these hazardous materials are in schools for indeed your protection. So if we look at these symbols all have this red diamond. This is quickly identifiable, and inside we have symbols to help us identify what we have. The only one that is different is this one here for biohazardous materials. Now, some of you will say, well, this looks like the symbols we use in zombie movies. That's true. But in many ways, this is a symbol that's been available for a long time, and they decided not to change it to make sure that all the work we've done so far with biohazardous materials remain untouched. I will discuss what it means in a moment. So let's see. Let's go through one of these to the 10 of these to make sure we understand them. So the first one we're going to take is this one right here in this red diamond, and it's flame. These are all products that are flammable, self-reactive. That means that sometimes if there's a shock that happened to them, we can also have maybe a small spark that could create an issue. We also have self-heating. So sometimes if we heat up some of these materials, they can turn into flame, so you have to be careful. In contact with water, emits flammable gases. So here, if it creates flammable gases and also some heat, that can create some flames, organic peroxide, and chemicals under pressure. Very nice. The next one here is what we called oxidizer. So that means here that we have here an O that represents oxygen and a flame. This represents materials that will burn in contact with oxygen. An example for that, for example, in the lab, I have magnesium that I put into a flame, and a few seconds after the magnesium reacts with oxygen, there's an oxidizing reaction which is exothermal. It creates energy, and we have a very bright white light. These are used, for example, in fireworks. When we have fireworks in the sky and we have all these white specks, this is an example of a metal that was heated and then is burning in the oxygen of the atmosphere. And for fireworks, different colors are different materials that are oxidizers. The next one here is this one right here. So this is a bit different from the previous symbols. This represents exploding bombs. They can be used for different, when we are looking for explosives used in mines, or when we are doing civil engineering demolition. But also, it could also be TNT, for example, situation where it could be explosive. So if we identify it, everybody understands. And it's also good for people using them, or for firefighters or other people helping when there's an issue. The following one is this one here, the gas cylinder. This is the gas under pressure, or chemicals under pressure. An example of this would be propane that we use for barbecues here. It could be oxygen in a compressed cylinder, where we have in hospital, for example, people needing more oxygen. If you work in a shop, we also have these with ethylene and oxygen to cut metals. The next one here is skulls and crossbones. This one here is an acute toxicity. So that means that there's very small quantity or something bigger. If it ends up in your body, either through the airways or the digestive system, can be fatal. So this is quite dangerous. Another word for that would be a very acute poison. And this is a bit different to this one here, which is what we call the health hazard. So these ones are products where when you have an exposition, short-term or long-term, it can bring cancer. You can have a respiratory sensitivity. It could be issues with reproductive systems with long-term contact. You could also have germ cell mutagenicity. So that means some cells could mutate and therefore bring some cancers. An example would be, for example, for this one, if you are if you're sensitive to perfumes, for example, and you go into an elevator and the door closes, some people sometimes have a lot of difficulties to breathe for some molecules. So that would be an example here. And this one is the most acute one. This one is not good. And the third one here with the exclamation point is what we called when it is creating irritation. So it's not something that is as bad as the other two, but here it brings uncomfortable moment. So it could be skin sensitivity when we're in contact with for example, how do we call this? We call them, I forget what it is. There's some plants, when it goes on the skin, it creates a reaction, toxicity. And there's other ones where some gases in going into the atmosphere, for example, CFCs, can affect the ozone layer, which can indirectly affect us as well. So these are examples of what it could be. And that's why, regardless of what you do in the lab, you want to wear your safety goggles, and if you can, some plastic gloves. Another symbol here is about corrosion. So for the corrosion here, it's when you are in contact. So there's some liquids, some gas, when they are in contact with metals or with the organic matter, will be some corrosion happening. So it could be some acids, it could be bases that are also acting that way. So we have the biohazardous materials here, the one I mentioned earlier. This one would be, for example, if you are working with some disease, doing research for vaccine and so on, this is a symbol that will be there to make sure that the workers working with these infectious diseases are aware and they can protect themselves. The 10th symbol, which is a new symbol from 2015, is something related to the environment. So we always talk in this lab, if you are doing an experiment, you want to dispose the chemicals in an environmentally friendly way. So there's a waste beaker usually for acids and base or organic matter, and there are companies disposing of these chemicals. Don't put them in a sink because these end up in the sewage system, and then some of the processing of the sewage sometimes don't extract all the parts. Another part as well would be if some humans are taking medicine or hormones or other chemicals for their health. Sometimes these end up in the environment. One example is estrogen, which seems to be being an issue in the environment. So this here are the WHMIS symbol, and they will be on containers in the labs. The other part of symbols I want us to look into, there are the symbols you may see at home more often. So here there are two different frames and then four separate symbols. So the frames are the following. We have the octagons here, octagon, and the inverted triangle. So the inverted triangle represents the container. The container is an issue. That means, for example, if you have a spray paint and you are heating that can explode, in which case some shreds can fly around and be dangerous to you. Same thing if you puncture such a pressured container. When we have the octagon, that means that the content of that container is dangerous. It could be here toxic, could have small toxicity to fatal toxicity. We can have corrosive, so many of the cleaners would have these, especially in, for example, for washrooms or when we want to clean grease, for example, and ovens. And then we have the flammable one, some oil and some other chemicals that we use in the household. So these are the other sets that we are using for home, whereas when we have the WHMIS pictograms, these are related to chemicals used in the workplace. So this is the information I wanted to share with you with respect to the symbols, to make sure that when you go to the workplace or in the lab at school, you can visually see that, oh, I have to be mindful, and for that you need to be aware of what they mean. On this, hopefully this will be helpful. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. Take care. Bye-bye.